Good morning, everybody. Good to see all of you. Should I say bienvenidos? Because Alex and I were just in Mexico. So, bienvenidos a la iglesia. So, welcome to Vineyard Longmont. We are a new church here in Longmont, Colorado. My name is Donna Ackerman. I'm one of the pastors here. Our vision is to embrace the kingdom, engage the world. We're going to sing a few songs and do some announcements, watch a video or two, hear a biblical message from one of our pastors. And we are so happy to have a new baby in utero with us. Congratulations to Bree and Adam. So let's stand and let's pray, if you're able. Lord Jesus, we thank you for your presence all over the world and here, right here in our hearts, Lord God. We want to, Lord, you want to be known by your people. We want to hear your voice. We want to know your face. Would you come and settle us that we can hear those things? Take the burdens of our lives and we just lift them up to you, Lord God. And at the end of the service, we won't take them back. Just leave them at your throne, Lord God. We worship you, Lord. I've been meditating on a scripture, and it goes something like this, and I won't say it right because I didn't prepare it, but think on the good things, think on things that are, in Colossians. So think on those things. Think on the good things. Think of his grace. Think of his wonderful self, and put away those other things. Amen. We worship the God who was. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors. He parted the raging sea. My God who holds the victory. We worship the God who was. So we worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors. He parted the raging sea. My God who holds the victory. Hey! There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. Oh, shout out your praise. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. As he hung up on the cross and he rose up from the dead, my God who holds a victory. Hey! There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. Woo! Shout out your praise, Lord. We were the beggars. Now we're royalty. We were the prisoners. Now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. We were the beggars. Now we're royalty. We were the prisoners. Now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. One more time. We were the beggars. Now we're royalty. We were the prisoners. Now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. So we won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. Oh, shout out your praise. Shout out your praise. We shout it out, Lord. You were the Word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. Name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. Death could not hold you, veil torn before you, silence the boast of sin and grave. Heavens are roaring, praise of your glory, for you are raised to life again. You have no rival, powerful name it is. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a powerful name it is. Nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. You have no rival. You have no equal. Now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom. Yours is the glory. Yours is the name above all names. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of cuán hermosa su nombre es. Cuán hermosa su nombre es. El nombre de Jesús mi Rey. Cuán hermosa su nombre es. Nada igualaré. Cuán hermosa su nombre es. El nombre de one more time. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. Things have passed away. Your love has stayed the same. Your constant grace remains a cornerstone. Things that we thought were dead, breathing in life again. You cause your sun to shine on darkest night. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Jesus, we love you. We pour out. Oh, how we love you. We feel your love. You are the one our hearts adore. Hopeless have found their hope. Orphans now have a home. All that was lost has found its place in you. You lift our wings You make us strong instead. You took these rags and made us beautiful. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. We're feeding our spirits with your love. Jesus, we love you. Let it drip down. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. Fill us. You are the one, the only one. Hearts adore you. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one hearts adore.
First Sunday of the month, and on the first Sunday of the month we get to participate and partake in communion. We do have some gluten-free. Does anyone need communion or need the gluten-free? Raise your hand and Alex will. Oh, and Pam. I have mine in my pocket. See if I can hold everything. Okay, well, so communion is about remembering who God is and how He has rescued us from death, and He's reconciled us to the Trinity through Jesus. And Jesus said to do this in remembrance of me. And because of that, He has called us into the priesthood of believers. Hebrews 4:14 through 16 says, therefore, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith that we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way just as we are, yet he did not sin. Let us then, let us together approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of I'm going to be reading from Matthew 26 through 29. And he said, while they were eating, Jesus took the bread, and then he gave thanks, and he broke it, and he gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take and eat. This is my body." Then he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink from this fruit of the vine from now on until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." Lord, thank you for this sacred moment to remember who you are and how you rescued us and who we are, your children, and that we can approach the throne of grace boldly because you, Jesus, swallowed up death so that we could be one with you and the Father and the Holy Spirit. We honor you, we glorify you, we lift you high. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Wait for the King of Heaven is rising like the sun. Wait for the King of Heaven, he's come to meet with us. Wait for the King of Heaven, he's riding on the clouds. Wait for the King of Heaven, he's coming for us now. We sing holy, 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 one who is holy, holy, one who's come, holy, holy, one who's coming back again. He's coming back again. He's coming back again. Woo! He's coming back again. He's coming back again. Wait for the King of Heaven, he's coming for his bride. Make way for the King of Heaven, he's making all things right. Wait for the King of Heaven, there's healing in his wings. Make way for the King of Heaven, for his kingdom and his reign. Holy, holy, the one who is holy, holy, the one who's come, holy, holy, the one who's coming back again. He's coming back, holy, holy, the one who is holy, holy, the one who's come, holy, holy, the one who's coming back again. He's coming back again. He's coming back again. He's coming back again. Rise up, rise up. It's a song of heaven. Rise up, rise up. Join the song of heaven. Rise up, rise up. Join the song of heaven. Rise up, rise up. Join the song of heaven. Rise up, rise up. It's the song of heaven. Rise up, rise up. Join the song of heaven. Rise up, rise up. It's the song of heaven. Rise up, rise up. Holy, holy, one who is holy, holy, one who's come, holy, holy, one who's coming back again. We sing holy, 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 one who is holy, holy, the one who's come, holy, holy, one who's come back again. Santo, 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 ¿quién fue? ¿Quién es? Santo, Santo, ¿y quién vendrá? Santo, Santo, el rey que pronto volveré. Jesús regresará. ¡Woo! Oh, it's so good to be home.
Lord, for this time, Lord.
wondered why we recycle the same problems in the church year after year? Broken relationships, unresolved conflicts, inability to speak truth, false peace because we're concerned about being nice. Week after week, we hear sermons about loving better, but nothing changes.
It has been rightly said that 85% of Christians are stuck, stagnant in their spiritual lives. Pete and I were among that number, and he was the lead pastor. We realized not only was the church's discipleship shallow, so was ours.
Over the last 21 years, we have developed the Emotionally Healthy Relationships course to address this massive need. This 8-session video curriculum will teach you practical skills that will radically transform your life.
You'll look at things like your family history, going back 3 to 4 generations, and how it impacts who you are today. You'll also learn things like how to resolve conflicts in a mature way.
Thousands of people all over the world have gone through this course. It is changing lives and entire churches. This course will revolutionize the way you relate to God and the way you relate to people. Join us for a discipleship that actually changes lives.
I have, oh, okay, back. They don't pass the plate here at Vineyard Longmont, but there is a box in your funds. Thank you, Pam. There is a box. And your funds make it possible for this ministry and this to really impact Longmont. And there are 4 ways to give, and you can do it online, you can text to give, and you can do snail mail. Yes, behind me. Yeah. And so if you're the good old fashioned, just write a check or put cash in the box, right? All right. So let's pray, and then I will turn it over to the video. If not, I'm sure it'll work out. So, right? Because we're easy going, oh, yes, and the children, Jaden, you got to go to your class. Looks like Lois is going to teach you today. Thank you, Lois. Thank you, Jaden. Woo, he's ready. Oh, thank you, Jesus, for Lois, and thank you for Jaden, and we ask that you bless their time together, that just your word would be planted in our little ones' hearts, that they might know your love above anything else, and that we might know your love above anything else, that we would operate out of that place. We ask that as people give, that you would bless the offering, that it might go to the places that you desire it to go. And we just ask that you would bless the people, that as they give, Lord, that you would touch their hearts, and that everything that they pour out, that you would pour back in. We thank you that that's what you do. We love you. Amen.
Well, good morning, Lisa. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing pretty good.
I'm a little envious.
You should be. And I'm in Puerto Vallarta right now. It's 80 degrees. Actually, it's 75 degrees right now. The high will be 82. As we speak, I am staring out at the Pacific Ocean from a hillside condominium where the whales come into this bay. And we haven't seen the whales yet. We could have taken a boat tour, but we were feeling too lazy. We were pretty busy the first 4 days, and then the last 3 days we're just doing some planning and just enjoying. Yeah, first time. Have you ever been to Puerto Vallarta?
I have.
Ah.
Yeah, I've been one time, and we went on a donkey ride, and then we also did to a waterfall, and then we also did zip lining.
Okay.
Down a canyon. It was very fun. I had a great time.
Yeah. Well, we're pretty much, now that we're in relax mode, we're just pretty much walking around and eating, and then eating and walking around. Start by me asking you the two questions that I'll be asking them.
Okay.
How would you define healthy living?
For me, it's having a sense of peace and calm regardless of what I'm doing, and it's moving towards life and away from death. And
interesting you didn't bring up the standard go-tos like diet and exercise.
Well, diet and exercise are a part of that,
yeah.
Right?
If they bring life.
I think exercise can bring death or it can bring life. It's all on how you do it.
I'm at the beach at Puerto Vallarta in the Zona Romantica, asking people about keys to healthy living and if they feel like spiritual stuff plays any part in that. What's your name?
My name's Dan.
Dan, thanks for helping me. So two questions. First one is, what do you think are some keys to healthy living?
I'm standing in one of them.
Okay.
Nature. I'm a nature walker. I go out there every single day. That's one. I commit to myself every morning as well. I'm an active morning person. Then in the afternoon, I enter more into the society, as you could say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mornings is more personal, and
Absolutely.
Then deal with the humanoids after the morning time.
In a good way.
What's your name?
Kim.
Kim, thanks for helping me. Where are you from?
North Central Washington, but originally from Seattle.
Okay, so what would you say are some keys to healthy living, like being healthy?
Oh, hobbies and close friends that are, can support you on your journey to health.
Okay. What's your name?
My name is Vicky.
Vicky, thanks for helping me. Would you say there are one or two keys to healthy living?
Oh, there's probably more than two.
Yeah.
But certainly what I'm doing today, beach walking, being in the fresh air. The Pacific, I think, itself at ocean air gives a lot of health to you.
Yeah.
I also have access to Lake Michigan a lot in the summertime.
Oh.
And that air is ionized and fabulous as well, so it's really healthy.
So in the summer, you're walking on the beaches of Lake Michigan.
Yeah,
in the winter,
still
you're
a
walking on the
sunset
beaches.
time. A lot of life, huh?
That's pretty cool. You feel like spiritual stuff plays any role in healthy living, or no?
Curious thing for me, I have more of an undefined or even unrefined, for that matter, spirituality.
Yep.
I know something there. I just don't know how to put a label on it because I don't like labels given.
Right. But
So-
that doesn't mean it's not spiritual.
Exactly.
So I guess, however that is for you, do you find it a part of your healthy living?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's part of my connection.
Connection.
Yeah. I need to stay connected.
I like the word connection.
Yeah.
If there's any kind of a spiritual element for you and what that feels like or what that looks like.
Oh, just being in nature is a spiritual experience, and I think they tie in well together.
Okay.
There's something, that higher power, that's created that.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
Yeah.
We were here last night and watched the sun go down, and as soon as it dipped below the horizon, people started clapping, which I don't know if that's common, but that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that is pretty cool.
Yeah. That involves like a spiritual component too, or not so much?
It has to be, because I think you have to have some peace, and you have to understand nature and your place in it, or you're just not going to be healthy. You're always going to feel like a misfit, right?
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of spirituality around us. So
Yeah.
I think if you're open to it, you're gonna find some happiness.
So like when you're walking the beach, in a way you're kind of communing with nature.
Absolutely.
Also, yeah.
And all of that is a prayer, isn't it?
I think that spirituality on some level plays a role in healthy living.
Absolutely. For sure. And actually, like, in psychology and research, they're showing now, like, used to be like totally forbidden to talk about spirituality in counseling, and now they're actually saying to not talk about spirituality in counseling is actually like dismissing a huge part of people. So even if they're not like professing Christians, people are still spiritual beings.
Yeah.
And so to make room in a counseling room for people's spirituality, that is actually connecting themselves to a resource that brings life, and it's a strength. It's a component.
Come on up, Lisa. Let's give it up for Lisa, who's doing everything today. Yeah, we'll try to make room. Let's switch these. Yeah. that'd be better. Do you put sugar in your coffee also?
It's a hazelnut latte.
Oh.
Triple shot.
A key to healthy living is no sugar in your coffee.
Starbucks is only a shot.
No, I was thinking I'd stand. You're okay standing?
Yes, I am.
We're talking about Leviticus today, so we're going to stand up to keep it more energized. Because Leviticus has a chance of not doing that. Some of you might have noticed I'm wearing the same shirt that I was wearing in Puerto Vallarta. I've literally worn it every day for 7 days now.
Well, your hair is so nice. Nobody is.
We did do wash last night. What'd you say?
You haven't changed your clothes in 3 days.
Yeah, it's only if I need to. So we were down there. It's my first time. We were invited. Vineyard Church down in Puerto Vallarta called Paradise Vineyard invited us to come down and do some healing prayer deliverance training. And so we did that a week ago Saturday, and then did church on Sunday. And beautiful time, very effective. Tried a new method of teaching about healing prayer and deliverance to the people, and then asking for a volunteer to come up and receive prayer in front of everybody, because this is a very private thing. And I had half a dozen volunteers, so we just picked one, and we had a beautiful time of prayer, soaking in the presence of God and some healing stuff. So I was very thankful for that. I didn't know if that would happen or not. Afterward, a bunch of people came and asked if they could get prayer during the week, and we were only able to do a couple of them, 3 of them. But I wanted to say about one guy who obviously you don't know this person, but he was a young Mexican man. And it's interesting because in Puerto Vallarta, you have a bunch of wealthy Canadians and Americans who come during the winter. And I guess we were kind of categorized as that. And then you have the locals who are just regular people. And one of the locals received some prayer with us. And he had been 4 months clean of meth. So, yeah, it was pretty cool. His connection was a woman at the church. That was his church. and he was part of a recovery group, and so he's busy. I think he's on step 3. Construction guy showed me his knee. His knee is literally this bone meeting with this bone with no kneecap. So he had an accident, and his kneecap was up here on his thigh somewhere. But he was just doing his thing. The reason I'm telling you this story is we got to where we always have people interact with Jesus, a good thing to do during the prayer, trying to look into the face of Jesus as if the face of Jesus were available. And what he envisioned was a very stern-faced Jesus who was pretty concerned about his sin issues. And he had some sin issues. He came from a background of a lot of witchcraft on both sides of the family. And so I told him that I didn't think he was actually looking at Jesus. Now, this might seem controversial to some, because every time that I see Jesus in prayer, and therefore every time the way I read Scripture, I see a smiling Jesus. And so eventually this guy, this guy wasn't sleeping at night. He was tormented. He was having severe problems all the time. He was desperate for prayer. And even when we started, he was just fidgeting like crazy. And as we started talking about it, he said, just to tell you, I can hear this voice in my head just making fun of you right now. And by the time I encouraged him to use his faith to envision the Jesus behind the Jesus he was currently familiar with, to the smiling Jesus, everything changed at that moment. And he got overwhelmed with peace. And you could see what that did for him. So what if, whenever we read the Scriptures, we read the Scriptures as if the God of the Old Testament was generally smiling? I mean, he has emotions. Did you know that? So he's not always smiling. But if God is love, then he's probably smiling a lot. When I feel love, I'm generally smiling. And if you read the Old Testament, or if you read the New Testament, stories of Jesus, if I read them with the idea that he's probably smiling, I begin seeing a lot of funny things that Jesus is saying that may not have seemed so funny at first. And I'm seeing a different side of Jesus. And so I think in the case of this guy, his connection with Jesus was fairly superficial. He did not have a good revelation of the love of God, and that's where it all begins. And so it was beautiful to see an immediate physiological change in him as he embraced the actual Jesus. And here's what strikes me is we have a lot of people who are experts, theological experts on important creedal truths about Jesus, that he's divine, that he was born of a virgin, that he died and rose again and ascended, and he's coming back. And we might have all of these truths nailed down, but listen, if your Jesus is not smiling, then I'm not sure how helpful your creedal accents are. So this is a big deal to me. So we're going to look at the book of Leviticus today through the eyes of a God that actually loves us and is generally smiling because he's full of peace and he's full of joy. Dallas Willard once said that the most joyful community in the history of existence is this threefold community called the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And they love each other. And they're together. And they defer to each other. And they're doing good. And so some of you were here 2 Wednesdays ago, and Lisa taught some stuff on Leviticus. It was so good that it was actually really good. How many of you were here 2 Wednesdays ago? A couple of you guys, yeah. It was really good. And so I had asked her to teach, because we're in the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. I asked her to teach about healthy living from the book of Leviticus, with the idea that all of the rules and regulations that we find in the 27 or whatever chapters in Leviticus are one of the purposes of them is to provide a place of learning how to walk in health for the people of God. And so you tackled that. You brought some really interesting things to it, which we're going to talk about today. But I want to set the stage first. And so The Exodus has just happened. So after 400 years of slavery, the children of Israel have fled from the desert and from Pharaoh, and they watched the seas close in on their enemies with wonder and astonishment, and went into a fairly hostile environment. They went into the desert, and now they're going to be with God in the desert. So they're just getting ready. They're coming up to the foothills of Mount Sinai. And in Exodus 19, we hear God telling Moses some things about his people. And keep in mind that the people of God in the Old Testament have continued on, have morphed into, we've been grafted into the people of God now. And so whenever you see God's talking to people, I believe when he's talking to Israel, he's talking to the people of God throughout time, space, and history. So this is actually something that I believe he says to all of God's people, including you. But these words will sound a whole lot different to you if your image of God is as someone who's indifferent or angry or frustrated all the time, as opposed to occasionally. Never indifferent, by the way. All right, so Exodus 19, verse 1. On the first day of the third month after the Israelites left Egypt, so they've been out of there for 3 months, on that very day, they came to the desert of Sinai. After they had set out for Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. Now keep in mind that this mountain that they're camping at, it's just a bleak, barren, rocky mountain. It's the same mountain where a year or so earlier, Moses, who at that time was just a nameless shepherd watching somebody else's sheep, his father-in-law's sheep, and happened to be at the same mountain and noticed a bush, and they were probably just seeing any bush out there was remarkable, but seeing a bush on fire, how sad that the only one of the few bushes is burning, and he's just like, there's a bush burning, and it just keeps burning, and he's watching it for a while, and the bush never stops burning, so he goes up to it, and of course we're very familiar with the story. The voice of God speaks out of that bush, and so he gets his instructions from God through that bush. And goes goes through a lot of trials and tribulations, 10 plagues, frees the Israelites, and they flee Egypt in the Exodus and the Passover, and now they're back at the exact same spot. I could just see Moses saying, "Hey guys, check out that little bush. It's still burning." You know, I mean, and if it wasn't burning, fairly quickly the entire mountain was burning. And so what began as this tiny little shrub. It eventually envelops the entire mountain, and they're experiencing God there. So he brings them there. Maybe he's saying, check out this little bush, and he goes and talks to God. Now, I'm sure Moses was like, there's talking to God in other places is fine, but at Sinai, talking to God is completely different. Do you know where Elijah fled when he ran from Jezebel and was just in freak out mode, like he's suicidal? Do you know where he ran to? He ran to Horeb, which is another name for Sinai. This is a cool place to meet with God. If you're feeling a little dry and you're quiet, hop a flight to Egypt and take a camel out to Mount Sinai. They think they know where it is. They're not 100%. Some people think Sinai is actually on the other side of the Gulf, but there is a mountain called Sinai that they think was the Sinai. So Moses is probably eager to go meet with God again. It says verse 3, and this should be behind me. Moses went up to God. Give it up for Jeff. Yes, Pam, we're recognizing Jeff. Yeah. Moses went up to God. Catch the import of that. He went up to God. The Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel." Here it is. God's quote to Moses about all these people camped in the desert. "You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself." Isn't that a beautiful metaphor? They were thinking flood, wiping out the army that was coming to kill us. God refers to the whole incident as flying on eagle's wings. God's the eagle. They're riding the eagle. I carried you out of there on eagle's wings.
Like Frodo.
Are there any other churches that are available? By the way, ours is the only church I know that during the communion talk, people are chiming in about how bland the communion is and how they didn't know it was gluten-free. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. We have a very interesting church. It's nothing to do with me and Donna. We are normal. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened.
Alex, I believe it's why we muted the room mic. Just saying.
We at one time considered the comments to be a part of our online service. We have a room mic, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Did you actually? Oh, because of all the feedback that we were having, or
something like that? Yes.
All right. Well, we're out of time. Thank you all for coming. This is my 5-minute intro, by the way. Okay, I brought you on eagle's wings to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations, you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests. Holy nation is an interesting way to put it. A kingdom of priests. Now, later on, and in Leviticus, he sets aside Moses' brother and the descendants of Aaron to be like the official priests. But God's saying, all of you guys you're a kingdom of priests. Now, what exactly is a priest?
It's a go-between.
It's a go-between. A priest, here's God, here's humans. A priest has this interesting and enviable job of touching God and humans at the same time. Michael.
We also are a conductor of God.
That's a really cool way to put it. Yeah, did you guys hear that? Conductors of God. So let's just say that God's electricity, and I'm like the conduit wire. And this is what happened when we prayed for this guy in Mexico. We were saying, actually, you need to take another look at Jesus because I think you got the wrong one. And when the connection takes place, you know?
And we can only be those conductors if we're connected.
All right. So God's wanting to connect his people. It's real simple. If you just obey me and follow my covenant, then you'll be my treasured possession and you'll be a kingdom of priests. Holy nation, these are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together. So we're talking 1.5 million people, potentially. We will do everything the Lord has said. So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. So he is the priest, conduit between God on the mountain and the people. Now the problem is that God's he's called this treasured possession. He's flying us out on eagle's wings, holy priesthood. The problem is that the part we're supposed to do can be really hard sometimes. If you obey me and keep my covenant. And so the question some people say, well, of course, because of the blood of Christ, positionally we're with Jesus, and therefore we're going to receive all the blessings, and it doesn't matter if I disobey God all the time. You know? And but the reality is I think that's where the rub is. And maybe the secondary rub is we don't think God actually is smiling. We don't think we're his treasured possession. We don't think he's carrying us out of trouble on eagle's wings. And we don't think that probably because we figure we're just messing it up so bad. And so the question for today, and really the question Leviticus asks, is how on earth can these people who, a few short chapters later, chapter 32, when Moses gets the 10 Commandments, he comes down and they're having a party. It's a really raunchy party.
We can't even talk about it.
Not at church. Bad. Yeah, talk about it after church with Lisa, if you want the gory details, or read chapter 32 of Exodus. But it's bad, and so God gives them this thing called the law, and a lot of Levitical stuff, because apparently from God's perspective, this is a stopgap or a way of them functioning and moving toward being really, really sinning, rebellious people toward obeying God and following the covenant. So do you ever feel like you have a hard time obeying God and walking in his covenant? Or do you ever feel like, yeah, I'm barely hanging on by the skin of my teeth. And so we're going to approach Leviticus as if it's from a smiling God who wants to help us become the kind of people that actually walk in his love and live out the law like Jesus talked about, because we're full of God's love. And so that is the setup for Leviticus. So we don't happen to have graphics yet, right? Oh, we do. Okay, so show that yellow one. And Lisa, take us through Leviticus. What exactly is Leviticus?
Well, Leviticus is the solution. There's actually, God gives us 3 solutions to the problem that Alex just talked about, which is that we can't be in God's presence because God is holy and the Israelites are unholy. Or you could say God is clean and the Israelites are unclean. And so the book of Leviticus is broken up into 7 sections, and you see on the left and on the right the 3 solutions, which are rituals, priesthood, purity, and then you see it on the other side, purity, priesthood, rituals. And in the Jewish structure of writing, I know I probably didn't say that exactly right, but the order is important because it's pointing to the highlight, which is the Day of Atonement. And so
this is actually a meta breakdown of the entire book. So
yes.
Chapters 1 through 7 goes through that order. It's really actually quite interesting. It centers on the big Day of Atonement. And what exactly is the Day of Atonement?
The Day of Atonement was, in addition to the other 3 solutions, which is like, so if you forgot something, right, at this day, the priests would have 2 goats, and the first goat they would kill, and the blood would be poured out, and the priest would confess all the sins onto the goat. And am I remembering that right?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Scapegoat.
the blood would go, the priest would take it into the Holy of Holies and put it on the altar, and the sins would be atoned for, or you could say covered for that year. And the Day of Atonement was the last day of Yom
Kippur. Yeah.
And go ahead.
So they escaped Egypt during Passover, which is for us Easter time. So that's in the spring. And Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, is in the fall, about 6 months later. And so we have the big rescue event, and then 6 months later they're at the mountain, and he's saying, "I have this thing that I want you to do. It involves a lot of blood. It involves cleansing, that kind of thing."
Yes, and so the second goat, the scapegoat, yeah. So the sins would be put onto the goat, and then the goat would be cast out into the desert as a sign that not only the first goat covered the sins, and the second goat removed the people's sins. And in the festival, it's a 10-day festival, and the people were called on to kind of reflect on that previous year and look how they might have hurt people, like things that brought death to people in our relationships. What is the relational impact? And then they would ask for forgiveness from the people and from God. And on this day, they believed that God would evaluate their worthiness for life, essentially. And if they repented and confessed their sins, then their name would be written in the book of life for that year. And if maybe they forgot, they believed that God, then they would probably die that year, essentially, is what they believed.
So they had like a year-to-year lease on their relationship with God. And, later on, I don't know about you, but when you see this stuff, it's like, well, we don't really do that today. But to me, the question on the table is how much of this is a mirror image, and that word's on purpose, because what you've done, what Lisa did is she took the order of the book, and we'll get to that in a second, and she, just as an experiment, reversed it as sort of how this works its way out now. So this is an idea that she had. I call it Hintonian Levitical theory. because her last name is Hinton. Actually, I think it makes sense because here's the deal. God said, you guys need help to be in my presence. And so we're going to start with rituals and things like the different kinds of offerings that they have. And then we're going to move toward priests, that we're going to have people in place to sort of be a buffer between me and you. And then we're going to get to purity laws. And so like in Leviticus 11 through 15, I don't know if you can see it, it gets into some really specific purity laws. If you have a skin disease, here's what you do. If you have an abscess or some kind of a discharge, here's what you do. And
in the Jewish mindset, there's like 7 things, I believe, maybe 5 or 7, I don't remember, but all of them were symbols of death to their way of thinking, and so that was a way of knowing that they were unclean if they were touched by that versus clean. And so I think the purity laws represent, are you moving towards death or are you moving towards life?
Yeah, and it just so happened that the things they were becoming purified from often could, from a health standpoint, lead to death. Somebody told me, I forget who, that that in the 1300s, the bubonic plague, that in Europe, I think 50% of the population died of the plague, but Jewish communities had a remarkably lower death percentage, and a lot of it's because they were still practicing the Levitical law. Isn't that interesting? So this stuff actually did protect them from doing it.
The other important thing to remember is in the purity laws, for chapters 11 through 15, is like being unclean in and of itself wasn't considered sinful. What was considered sinful was knowing that you were unclean and going into the presence of God.
Yeah. So he created a system so that they could be in God's presence. Now, picture a smiling God, not a wrathful God, a God who wants to smile and have them in his presence. And so he's not saying, you better, you better, you better. He's saying, I have something for you. Yeah. And this is meaningful for you so that we can literally be in each other's presence. What's interesting is it stair steps back up again. The left side is very much personal stuff, your personal sin, your personal skin. And then the right side, that's a beautiful logo. The right side is more group. So it's the same stuff, but applying to a group. So purity, for example, now we get into the sexual ethic, who you can and cannot sleep with. So it's beginning to involve something outside of yourself. The priesthood, it's like here's how you manage the group in your priesthood role, and then finally rituals. It goes from just offerings to the big 3 feasts of God's people. 3 times a year you gather. This is the stuff that you do, and so it starts off personal and becomes corporate. It becomes a community thing.
That's really important. That's really important because the offerings and the rituals and the first half is about like saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry to God. I'm sorry for hurting others. And then
even if you didn't do it on purpose.
Even if you that was the really standout point for me in chapter 5. It really got repetitive. It's like unintended sin, and because he knows that we're marked by sin and that we in our culture and that we don't live in a vacuum, and so therefore we carry out things that we inherited from our family of origin. And
okay, so Paul talked about how this stuff was like a school teacher or a tutor to get God's people from like infancy to adulthood. And so the idea here is this stuff was really key for a certain stage of the people of God's development. And now you talked about a couple things. Can you throw up that slide that has the proximal, schmoximal?
The zone of proximal
All right.
development.
So can you talk about this for a little bit? This is the idea that you need to go from one stage to the next if you're going to grow.
Yes. So this is Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, and the idea is essentially that there's certain steps in our development that we can achieve, and then there's things that are outside of our ability, right? And so this next step, it's like we need help to obtain that next step, but there's absolutely no way, even with help, that we could get over to the 3rd or 4th step. And so the idea is that there's scaffolding like that is provided, or a way to get from one place to the next. in our development. And so, like, you could think of a baby, and like at first a baby can't even hold its head up, right? And then so you wouldn't expect a baby that can't hold its head up to just start walking. Even with help, that's not doable. So what is the next thing? It's like, well, through tummy time, the baby learns how to hold its head up. It gains strength. And that is providing a scaffolding from one stage of development to the next stage of development.
Yeah, eventually that baby's rolling over, crawling, standing up. Right now, our second grandchild went from standing up to walking like 2 weeks ago. So we're just like throwing parties so that he could walk. But and this is just human development theory. But the thing is, but this is not even religious stuff. This is people studying how we develop. And so the eureka for you, because you're in seminary studying pastoral counseling.
Clinical mental health counseling.
Ah, cool. And so you're seeing this, and then for you, you're studying Leviticus, and you're like, oh, the whole point of this progression of ritual priesthood purity is like proximal development. It's God taking us bit by bit to better stages of interaction with Him and with others.
Yes. Yeah. So I was reading for one of my classes, The Reciprocating Self by Balswick, and he is a theologian and a pastor and a counselor, and he is taking developmental theory and along with theology and combining them and saying one problem with human development is, from a secular viewpoint, is that they don't talk about what is the goal of human development. And so he's like, guess what? God has a goal for human development. Did you know that? Right? He does. And Balswick contends that, and he puts forth that the goal of human development, as God intends, is the reciprocating self. To live according to God's design is to glorify God as a distinct human being in communion with God and others in mutually giving and receiving relationships.
All right, so we have a Christian counselor, theologian guy who's saying this is God's goal. And I have to jump in because the question is God okay with us being over here in our spiritual walk before we get over here?
Well, He created us. He created, I think it's why He came as a baby.
Yeah.
Rather than as
He actually went
through
through
adult, because He went through the process. God is not concerned with how fast we grow, just whether we're willing to grow and participate.
Yeah, as opposed to stagnate. Okay, that's good. So is it okay to be in a community of believers and still be a total wreck? Is that actually okay? And okay, yeah, whoever said that.
Just don't say that way.
Yeah. Now, here's the next one. Is it okay for us as a community of the people of God to embrace and accept people that are complete screw-ups, even though we want them to get to this place over here? Or do they need to clean up their act before they can come into the building? Okay, do you get this? Sorry, I'm getting all tingly now, because a lot of places it's like, please clean up your act or get out. And what if we told our grandson, until you walk, do not come near me. You know, and so this is how the community of God functions, and this is a picture of how God works with us, and how we're to self-perceive, and how we're to perceive others with grace, as Paul says, because I know I'm the chief of sinners. Tim.
I was just going to bring it back to your, is God smiling to begin with, or is He angry to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
Because that defines what kind of communities we create. The reason we create communities that say clean up your act and then come in is because we think that's what God is doing with us. So
yeah.
God is like saying, I love you.
We're slaves, and so we're going to enslave other people as they come in. It's no different than my 4-month fresh from meth buddy perceiving God as just having a real problem with the stage that he's in right now.
It's important. Oh, Jeff has something he wants to say about it.
I'm curious where it falls in, and if it's a curveball, I'll apologize. Where does "I can do all things in Christ" fit into this?
Christ who strengthens me. But what stage are you at?
Bingo. I eventually can do all things through Christ, and I can potentially do them now.
But so that idea, and I'm so glad you said that, Jeff, because what the church has put on us is that all of a sudden where we are developmentally is not okay. And so that's shaming. That's not empowering or gracing. And that's the thing about Ballswick's model, is that it's characterized by gracing, empowering, and intimacy.
Because that's what's happening within the triune relationship.
Yeah, and so that was the other thing, is it's based on the Trinitarian model of particularity and relationality in complete unity. And it's also based on God's covenantal love. And so that's why, like, in the middle of the night, I was like, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, that scaffolding is flipped now. Because Jesus came back and he swallowed up death. He is life, Irma.
From beginning to end of that picture that you got, you can do all things through Christ.
Yeah. In the process.
Space or whatever. Faith tells you, if you're the baby or whatever, I can do all things that strengthen me. As you walk with Christ, it's going to still tell you what? I can do all things through Christ.
And what's weird is sometimes you're here and this happens. Like, how did that happen?
What happened is people switches that. They'll say, well, you're not, you've been in God long enough, you should.
Yeah.
I think it's the idea, Irma, that when we're faithful with a little, then we'll be given more.
There you go. All right, Jeff, go back to that graph, and then this is our home run.
Genevieve has something.
Yep.
So the idea is I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, all things that he's asking me to do. Yeah. And as an infant, he's not going to ask me to do something ridiculous. That's right. He's going to ask me to do something I can do.
But sometimes he will. Like a child will lead them, and it'll be so obviously him. And you'll just laugh because it's like, obviously I can't heal anybody, but I just said some words and stuck my hands on somebody, and look what happened. And then God's laughing, we're laughing, and it's just like this is actually real. All right, so back to this. So here's the closeout, because we have to, because I talked too long at the beginning. So just a second. So now we're starting from this place of connection, of washing. And then the idea here that Lisa has is that these things are still in play, but we grow in these things from this initial position.
And it's not linear. Like, that picture looks very linear. It's a back and forth. Like, as we become more pure, we become better and more like Christ. So our ability to be priests changes, and therefore our rituals, which are, I'm sorry,
yeah,
repairing ruptures.
Stuff here they are, yeah.
Yeah, repairing ruptures, and our ability to be in God's presence so that we can be filled, increases, and it's a back and forth. But it all centers around the cross and the death and resurrection,
the blood
of Jesus.
Mike.
Finally, I was going to say, man, call things that aren't as if they were. That's what I had to do to myself.
Yeah, there's definitely that element in there.
There you go, Jeff. Call things that aren't as if they were.
But don't pretend that they're not if they're not yet. No. It's okay to say, I'm still a toddler, and God still loves me. And that's the key thing, is God actually happy with you where you're currently at, or is he completely frustrated with you? And to me, we're getting down to how we feel about ourselves. And if we're self-frustrated all the time because of our current stage, all we're doing is disagreeing with the smiling God. And we are to grow and we are to change. We're not throwing that out, but we don't do that through guilt and through judgment.
Yeah, and just Ballswick, a final quote from Ballswick is that although the covenant of grace rules out law as a basis for a relationship, community members, that's us, living in grace will accept law as patterns, order and responsibilities in relationship. And
Which
that's
can
the
look
difference.
like law or ritual. It can look like, man, lighten up, dude. But it's like, no, this person, I will not drink around my friend who's an alcoholic or whatever. Yeah. All right. So next week, we're going to, it'll be week 2 of healthy living. We're going to continue on this theme. I want to talk about the role of ritual in transformation, which is not a very vineyardy thing to look at because we're not a liturgical, ritual focused people. But I want to explore the idea that we can, starting from Christ and transforming internally to externally, the important role that rituals in our lives can play. So that should be interesting. So why don't you guys stand?
Can I say something?
Yes.
So, it's very sad that when you approach someone, it seems to me like the word "I'm a Christian" is almost offensive to people in society because so many people have not been Christ-like in their actions.
Yeah, we've been a lot of judging and a lot of correcting.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in all the craziness that I was trying to communicate with you, I love the thing about Romans 1:20 and finding it in without the NIV is what I've read all of my life. Well, not all of my life, but it's what I'm familiar with. And it says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power, His divine nature, have all been clearly seen, and being understood what has been made, so that people are without excuse." Now, trying to find that, because I don't know anybody can look at the world and everything in it and not see that a creator created
Yeah.
it's beautiful, it's perfect. But to find something that doesn't seem oppressive when you're trying to talk to someone about God the Father, God the Creator,
Yeah.
God the Healer, that it doesn't just smack somebody in the face when you take it in
Right.
because they think everybody's there to judge them. When anybody who is a Christian is there to love them.
Theoretically.
And judgment is just us of the flesh. It's not us of the.
Yeah.
It's not God in us.
Well,
I think it comes from focusing first on ourselves and getting ourselves right and allowing His love to be in us and giving us eyes to see the other as God sees them, where their sin is covered and it is removed from them, and yet what we see is their sin, and so therefore we want to evangelize them. And what I'm saying is that, and what I believe God would ask us to do is to live out of that place and say, I see you over your sin. And I think that we do that by our actions and by coming alongside people and empowering them and also holding them accountable in the sense of like, where are they at? Helping them take the next step, using our power to empower them.
I agree.
All right. So, yeah. So, as we close in worship, and I'm glad that you guys are playing beautiful things because that really fits. I would encourage you just to close your eyes and look at the smiling God that we know as Jesus, and just envision where you are in your stage, and maybe just acknowledge your self frustration, and then just allow Jesus to smile upon you in your current stage of infancy, and maybe just soak in that a little bit if you can. So let's do that.
This pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. Wonder if life could really change at all. beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. All around, hope is springing up from this old ground. Out of chaos, life is being found in you. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. So you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. You make me new. You are making me new. You make me new. You are making me new. You make me new. You are making me new. You make me new. You are making me new. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. You make me new. You are making me new. You make me new. You are making me new. You make me new. You are making me new, Lord. You make me new. You are making me new. One more time. You make me new. You are making me new. You make me new. You are making me new. Yes, Lord. If you've been touched in any way from the sermon, or God's in your heart, not in your heart, and you'd like Him to be, we have a ministry team that we would love to pray for you. Just right on the back wall. This Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. We're not necessarily a liturgical church, but we want to recognize that it is Ash Wednesday. It's the beginning of 40 days of Lent. We will have our regular Wednesday night service. Our worship will definitely, Jeff will bring some stuff to get you ready for 40 days of Lent. Does that sound great? All right. Love you guys. So glad we're home. We're going to continue in worship. Go back and prayer if you like. Don't forget to leave something in the box. Tithe as an offering to Jesus. All right, love you guys. God bless you. Thank you, Lisa and Alex. That lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven, spoke your name into the night. And through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadow of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from heaven to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. And came the morning that sealed the promise. Your broken body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion led the grace, snowed rain on me. Jesus, yours is the victory. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its victory. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its victory. He has broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ. Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ,